Hello, Long Legion. Vast opinions and a falling awe since semi-ancient times. Just reminds. Now, this is because, in relationship to the flag, which, both sides are value here, great value, when realized together. In other words, in relationship to what's removed from urban schools, almost completely, but it's subtle and it's missed, and it's blamed on others with urban areas and with suburban areas. It's a database relationship. That was set up by they use database relationships forced against everyone. The slavery of our founders, which modern agencies, every modern nation fell to this, which was inter-nation sciences criminally re-engineered within areas and states of nations maintain crime method to only let realized employed roles with what was overtly unrealized, and interbranch, interscience areas maintained, and then areas maintained again, and then through agencies, and then again. So peak sophistication of Oz. Santa Claus is about this. About I'm not a lawyer. It's about misprision criminality, where everyone's a knave, fact, treatment, and nature at once. With that pseudo justice and that glorified. Every modern nation, and so this shows even the recorded motivations for it. But we have what this did was make the peak sophistication, for example, in relationship to treatments of radical Islam, because this is treatments of the Constitution, radical religious correlation. These are naive fact treatment nature tricks top down, forced by ill markets positions, value nature system, which is by spaces captive, forced to ulterior from natural value nature system. Criminally re-engineered since semi-ancient times to exploit what had been understood about human fact treatment nature and science in relationship to actual nature's value of progression as its identity of value coming through temporary space nature, a forever nature. So distinct inherently in this active phase, and distinct progressively. In this active phase, temporary space nature is the phenomenon with the progression of its own value inherently, actively, progressively, Allah at the same time. Value Al, two longings, and value AH, progressive value, which will only stay positive unto itself and will only shift negative value nature, because negative value nature and positive value nature are not the identity are not the context of the identity of the progression of the identity of space Allah, but are another nature, a forever nature that is progressively of value to the semi-nature of Allah that is in temporary space nature. And this is a relationship to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost at the same time. And this is a relationship to three natures of time at once, which is sequence nature, which is time is a physical body of value, conceptual value as a nature value, bonded, because there is no time. It's temporary space nature. So then sequence nature is in nature. Sequence nature. Also, all the sequence natures, three natures, them finite individual ones, group ones, in relation to in the whole clock. Together, like our body, is a demonstration of this. Is an identity of value nature relationship that is a nature that adds value onto itself, which is a semi-nature that is beyond that will only progress in relationship to the progression of this identity of space that is making the phenomena of positive value nature, forever nature, with additional the identities of value being added to it, like with the earth, with no criminal persuasions, and especially criminally legalized persuasions, which this is, and to have that justified in relationship to that. So vetting is what I was going to say about, because vetting is with a crime method, a breaching method, in relationship. This is not just to say, oh, it's a dirty database. Is the method by that. Because the ancients knew that we are a fact treatment nature that has reactions in relationship to this. With the Old Testament, it's about with Cain and Abel. About a value nature system tactically ulterior from Romulus and Remus connected to Alpha and Omega. We'll see a clear body of value. Victoria, the discernment of Victoria value, which can be either or, and Victoria, which is definitely Omega's positive relationship to herself too as value. And Romulus is positive polarity nature as alpha nature onto itself, as left to right nature. And Omega is right to left nature, but as the same value too. We're at the same, but by that is, in other words, that's our value. So that's also both of those at the same time. So we are a quality of diffusion at the same time onto ourselves, onto groups, and/or sexes, and onto the entire species body at once, and in relationship to the perfect nature with no criminal persuasions at once. And what understands that and uses that, a correlation, multi-front, what is only discernment of the identity of positive that is only positive always. That's ratiocination. That's a correlation that is a progressive value. See, that this breaching organized crime set up colonization's laws with colors, where our founders were white, or were Caucasian, or whatever. So, but they were slaves of a different form for the long-term phases of the linguistic and the divisions, which is cultivated in relationship to data, not just in relationship to databases, but by a crime method tied to vetting, because it's a crime method that has everyone as Oz, even kings and chiefs, because top down, bottom up, negative value nature, everything overall. So we'll examine this. The difference between positive and negative value nature as nature. And in relationship to our identity, this course only demonstrates all ways at once and only using positive or negative value nature progression. That's why some jerk, that's not my phrase, jerky, I don't know. It makes about evolution when someone says evolution, because this is the sciences are obfuscated individually together, grouped, and sequentially. So the vetting is tied to a method that is creating natures that are victim predators, and because in relationship to the nature of criminal justice, which is vast, and shared vastly ill from this relationship to the Santa Claus, from a tactically denatured base. So I don't even have time to wait to show you guys it. The ancient snow people had whole bunch of people at once. This is the story of how Asia and Africa then connected and made the Campus Martius in Europe as a correlation nature, understanding this before the tactical degradation of human education, and so of the human fact treatment nature, and so per a method to keep this self-maintained this way, as an abridged fact treatment nature, incapable of defending that formally and us from what was his internation as a method to the self-maintenance and what's keeping that self-maintained, which is an archetypal organized crime, criminal enterprise, archetypal criminal enterprise. I'm not a lawyer. But when we come to predicate value, which is always positive relationship to itself, inherently, actively, and progressively, is value as nature, English, as correlation nature, and as its relationship to the bond that is simultaneously the bond to three natures of time, sequence, time, physical, value because it's got relationship to the nature as value. And the progression. See, the progression of mind's not taught to understand this organized crime with fact treatment nature, especially those most hurt by it, tactically differential. In other words, the same crime method recorded and pretending it's not realized because it's stacking other recorded doing that in databases with areas, with campuses, and with courts and with jails, with torture method. And so what this is through vetting, but everyone has us, just reactions to, because everyone's a progression nature. So when especially if you're a victim of worse of the black laws and stuff they put, and then like with criminal justice and with overt internation criminal enterprise juxtaposed with like KKK and stuff like that, it's in conjunction with a method that is keeping that. In other words, well, we'll get to that. In other words, it's internation criminal persuasions that has nature's motivated to pretend other. So how are you going to do that? You have to pretend you're still a patriot and you're about land or something like that. Because really they're keeping correlation sabotaged from demonstration. It's demonstrating what's recorded. And they're keeping the agencies motivated, for example, with vetting, with telling the presidents to go after that. That's the agencies relies on, with lying to him, recorded. And intermilitary lying to presidents, recorded. And how motivated to it, recorded. And tied to the sequence shifts with courts interstate, proven and further recorded. Tied to the Trade Center attack, leading up to it, and since, further recorded, in a pattern tied to the vetting, tied to the motivations that are internation, self-maintained, and how motivated everyone gave justifications of that by the breaching method that is juxtaposed overt criminal enterprises, unrealized criminal enterprises, and criminally internation legalized criminal enterprises, including ourselves, nations, as ours. Everyone to all areas, all states, and top down by the forced shared time, men positions, and everyone to the shared markets positions ill too, from a tactically denatured base, not just human factory nature base, but means, tactically denatured Native Americans means, and stuff like that. tactically knew that it had to be explained, so they layered it with other motivations. That wasn't just money. What wanted wealth and stuff like that would want to do it where evolution would still take place. They denatured everything. Forest, third value nature system. One that no one, even kings, don't realize because they're playing the game of survival, retreat. That every nature, that retreat is a negative value nature progression. That the entire worth of the human species, one little species, depleting Earth's value. Leth of Hades, positive negative relationship as temporary positive, so as lasting negative value nature to that nature's progression. See yin yang. Lost course returns. They'll drop the force, the source we speak for, learn. So we're leaving is to understand this. Is to force evolution. It's to force the markets locked down, not just at the bottom, but forced where that has nothing to do with the tactically claimed worse than bottom human standards, space nature treatments, water relationship treatments, tactically forced with the method of slavery upon our founders, tactically force chained to even sicker roles with the sicker forms of slavery for the long-term fact treatment nature. So they couldn't explain their thing. They want us to explain it because they recorded it, but they have other glorified. They have other glorified in relationship to physical battles and theater that was orchestrated, cultivated, from a base propagated for and roles to it before it was a formal Oz. Then through the sciences already that, some more. Then as they only realize sophistication, only predatory comparison nature to the rest of pseudo-patriotism nature. Every modern nation. To enforce the share market's position, that means value nature system, relationship to identity. Identities of business are ill. The value spill, Leth of Hades. Long legion, hear your name, it stole. The campus too, campus Marcius return. Be the value of each tribe. Return, who learn. So the birth of the campus Marcius was with nations that realized, just like with sexes, there's a body of value that is bigger than space. Just like our identity is bigger than the size of our bodies. As to an extent, we know. And in other words, when we were kids, and now, and it'd be value. If I knock this over, it's still a value. I mean, to the extent, but it's more than that. So, but in other words, it's only here or a force from here as negative value nature, which is about positive value nature, because negative value nature is positive value nature, but it's its negative relationship to itself, which is a relationship to the identity that is in diffusion through already an identity before temporary space nature, and staying as only, this is magnifying the value of being, is progressing the value of being positive and or being negative. See, but now we have a tactically denatured fact treatment nature, because we have a tactically denatured relationship to the value nature system, and we have offensive areas, crime method against each age of fact treatment nature. Individually grouped together sequentially into all areas, into all states of nations, and shared. Tactically, criminally re-engineered science. That's why someone jumps up and says, obfuscates it. What what it is scientifically, make it like it's a debate or theory. You could demonstrate by science that what causes evolution, which is correlation's value. That's what causes it, which is multi-front, which is the discernment of what is only the identity of positive, which is the discernment of its positive relationship to itself too, as a progression, because that progression is only evolution, or as Leith of Hadith, is de-evolution is the cause of it, for space-nature transfer. And see, that's why all the wealth they talk about is still in and as the pathology of home values and zoning laws and relationships to nature, tactically denatured, enforced by the slavery of in the North, with its roles with slavery and with the database relationships, and to what George Washington had to leave entrenched, that he wanted us to explain about with internation, interbranch, Connecticut, and intermilitary corruption, tied to his agreement with the French. Whatever that was, to the extent is also criminally being obfuscated, because that's what led us into World War One, and it wasn't liberated. In other words, it was with a much uncharged criminal insidious nature that was legalized, but just like it was with slavery, it's not legal. You see what I'm saying? So we have to deal with what's not letting areas be able to report predicate acts, which is in relationship to criminal enterprises juxtaposed per interest with overt criminals, unrealized criminals, informal ones, and military ones juxtaposed together with medical corruption, and not just, but then with ties to through areas. This is why it's tied to prisons and tied to courts as victim predators. So that's why we need to see. You can't. They're doing what we need to counter, not as, but we have to do it multi-front. So sometimes, but we have no place to do it because there is an offensive sequence shifting. In other words, this is internation to the maintenance of this being blamed on other and on others. That's how we had Oz saying, anyone can make it out of poverty. And that leaves out, pretends it doesn't understand. All that was forsaken, obligated to be explained about the nature of organized crime against the human progression nature. The human progression with time used as a weapon here, set up to be perpetually self-maintained, breaching nature, formal uses of it, in conjunction with overtly gangland and juxtaposed unrealized gangland, all blaming on our human nature, all as styles reliant upon pseudo-ratiocination, pretended in ratiocination's name, formally right where we have criminal justice, right inter-science, right where we have it tied to courts, with database crimes, with sequence shifting crimes, with trick fact-shaped natures, with manipulations of juries recorded, means to it, and nowhere to report it because it's juxtaposed with live progression cover-up nature agencies, juxtaposed with interests and motivations that juxtaposed with many liars at once, dependent, needing to blame it on others. So this is how the motivations of the roles with it, even after George Washington gave us a path to the description of this as a fact treatment nature, how it was motivated, pretended to be free and liberated before it was and is. So we need everyone to understand too, like Kaepernick, Kaepernick, which is great to have someone like that, to be able to do that so neat like that. And because, and at the same time, the president, which is in relationship to a value nature system relationship and understandings he has about the actual integrity and morality of the nature of value nature system agreements our nations have as ours, which is non-existent. And this is relationship to King's Oz recorded, President's Oz recorded, Chief's Oz recorded, Queen's Oz recorded. Chief is I don't know. So, what I'm saying is that so what we do is admit this. We admit this. This will forgive this. What they do too, they make with this offensive thing, they make people have to describe. There's a hurt victim predator with criminal justice. There are people with undercover, unrealized hurt, but with it blamed on other and on others of every color, and everyone of every color is blaming on other and on others. What was done to every color is being blamed on every other and on others, including everyone's same cultures and stuff like that. Every culture had a role in conjunction with agencies only that realized the bridge together, and incapable of defending what will perpetually demonstrate negative value nature progressions, the demonstration of it, the loss of the value of the campus Marcius, of the internation sciences, and of various sciences, of states of sciences, revealed before their criminal internation persuasions. And so that was his progressive value to the nature of what is forever nature as positive value nature, instead of negative value nature as the value nature of the progression of our identities. So there's a progression there. There's time impositions with the mind. And we have psychology, we have juxtaposed with overtly criminal drugs and with prescription drug crimes, and with the gangs and with the undercovers with them, all tied to database rackets with the courts, with sequence shifting rackets, name switchings, and then that makes fact treatment confusions, and they attach people to fake behavior, fake mental illnesses, fake responses, fake language, and we're not letting the recorded proofs of this while the database illusion stack that way. In conjunction with doing that with each age of campus, and no one realizes how. Everyone's a victim predator because everyone's trained to deal with databases and to deal with investigators. Only let originally and maintained victim predators, criminally foreign inference, not just through the sciences, but through areas, through fact treatment nature responses. So they do that. They do that by interweaving questions, because everyone's trying to figure this out. Everyone's a fact treatment nature response measured all tools. In other words, correlation shows science. This is not science. There's no jobs that are going to pull everyone out of poverty. There's a tactically denatured relationship to nature that was set up to keep the negative value nature progressions that they knew it would cause, because that's how space works, and blamed on others, and justifying that as standing lie progression cover-up natures, even our agencies. So they came with shock and awe, because you can't defend that until our American history still didn't explain the value nature progression intellectual slavery and torture of black kids. Every age of fact treatment nature, and of everyone with that. So, but with suburban schools, there's an isolation from that when you're a kid, because they don't know how to. They're victim predators that don't know how to explain the organized crime method using human fact treatment nature, and it's worse because their roles with expert lean is tied to Joseph Mengele type stuff, still formal here. Still, this was with the motivations for the early states to stay with slavery, that George Washington had to leave entrenched, even though it was tied to his slavery. It's not about money, it's about natures of wealth that were all slave or die and have everyone tortured. It is a crazy method to have slavery in all these nations, to have internation shared, juxtaposed, all kind of formal database corruption, interbranch, intermilitary, internation, police and medical and stuff shared here, psychology tied to courts and prisons, juxtaposed with database crimes, needed to cover life progressions, needed to hurt fact treatment nature, to keep all fact treatment nature abridged nature, and or indifferent, indifferent to it, victim predator exploiting it, which everyone was only realized to do and to be encouraged to do. So if someone needs to have proper fact treatment nature, they try to make sensibility arguments and pretend it's about whatever thing, but it's really the area's connections to interbranch and intermilitary and to internation cultivated as nature's predators. We need to cover life progressions, roles, with what's keeping it this way, consciously. You just claim poverty, no good. Then there's means for free bricks, real cheap bricks, way better quality. Then there's means. Knock out all the zoning laws, find where there's bedrock, instead of, find where the water was put away, put it into, that's where energy is. It's way more energy you can make dropping water than it takes to lift it. And how much it saves and how much it gains value nature progression, because this identity of value only works, the positive value nature, the identity of value that's coming through here only works bottom up at the same time. The earth overall up. In other words, that's where science works with correlation. A value nature system that can't claim this worse than bottoms. These are losses from the American Revolution that our founders, George Washington, I don't know, really mad. He would probably want me to get in this video right now. But we can't take it because we have sensibilities. We also have fake news being in the sensibilities of ad companies juxtaposed with predator areas roles with the aforementioned formal and internation families here. It's very sick. But they don't know what to do. Victim predators ever went to spots. So when someone has to describe the evil connected to what's directing investigations, directing people to make confessions and demonstrate real and or for whatever modalities to their undercover, establish whatever, they're doing this in a pattern, and then it's getting attached to database illusions. This is attached to rackets with the formal ones. And so then people have to describe this. They have to describe evil in people. So they're going to talk bad about people. And that's being exploited. And what's indifferent to that is being cultivated as a weapon. Suit and ties.